get me outside on the trails big time. So, in fact, I have shut the door to my office because this morning I also have cats, and a cat that's an indoor cat somehow managed to bring a live chipmunk into my office. And it is now hiding behind some things and I can't extract it. So if a chipmunk runs across my desk, that's not planned. Just so you know.
Well, interesting that it's found a home inside. And this just goes along
Hmm.
with all of the environmental work that you've done, the photographing of wildlife, not just animals, but plants as well. Beautiful shots of the countryside wherever you live. You were here in East County for a long time and then you moved back to New York. Tell us a little
Right.
bit about that.
Well, I grew up in New York and then lived overseas. But I spent good 20 years in San Diego County. So I spent a lot of time. I feel like that's home, actually. San Diego still feels like home to me, but I moved to New York to help my mom, and it's one of the reasons why one of many that I'm very interested in talking to the audience about not just the proposed rule on hunting in national wildlife refuges, but also jumping to another but very wildlife environmentally related topic of Lyme disease, because it's hugely epidemic here in New York. And that's not to say it's not in California, so we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But that's been a big adjustment of all things that I did not expect coming to New York. I knew the weather and coming back to live in a very rural place, which I love. I call them lawn bears. We have a bear that comes and slurps the leftover bird seed from where I bring the bird feeders in every night so that he's not too motivated to come back. But so the wildlife here is it's really fun. But there are some other things too to deal with, and that includes epidemic Lyme, unfortunately. But like I said, we'll get into that.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get into the um, part one of this conversation, and that is going to be about the environment and what the current administration is trying to pass along. Mike has just entered the
Please
studios,
forgive me,
so
forgive
we'll
me,
have
forgive
Mike
me.
continuing on.
Please
He's
forgive
entered the
me.
room.
Please forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. I'm not going to give you an excuse. I'm just going to take responsibility and tell you how just thrilled we are to have someone that can talk to us about environment, health, all the things that are the most important. So, welcome to the show. And I have a question for you. I heard Arnold Schwarzenegger this last couple of weeks, and he was over in Europe at a conference trying to deal with the issues of environment. And he said something that I thought was interesting. He said, I'm not calling it climate change anymore because that becomes, it's so, you know, uh, it's a term that has been abused by folks that are not as concerned about the environment as should be. Because we're calling it pollution. Have you heard anything along those lines that there's an effort to try and get people refocused on the fact that when we're putting out massive amounts of pollution, that we really need to focus on trying to reduce the pollution that's going into our air and our water and all that? Is that something that's out there?
It definitely is. Thank you, Arnold, because, and this is something that's near and dear to me, is communication. I got my second master's was really about communication and education in environmental science, because as you know, being in this venue, how we talk about things matters. Our ideas in our heads become actions. And so definitely climate change feels like, oh, all right, change, no big deal. And that's why I appreciate the term climate crisis, but I like climate pollution better, and other people are starting to finally say that. For starters, now you're avoiding the whole, well, let's just call a spade, the MAGA tendency to say, oh, we can't say climate change. Okay, fine, we'll say climate pollution. You didn't write that off yet, did you? But it just gives us a sense of what we're talking about. Generally speaking, it's not a good thing. It's something that is really damaging. And it's really good to have a simple phrase to encapsulate that. So it's
Yes.
slowly catching on. I'm really glad to hear he said that.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so let's say if someone goes into their garage and closes the garage door and turns on their car and roll down their windows, at some point, that's going to have a clearly recognizable health impact. I mean, would that be a fair statement, do you think?
Well, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the question. We are putting out so much pollution, so much carbon, so much coal. You know, some countries are still very heavily dependent on coal. We are still dependent on coal, or make use of it. I don't know if we're dependent. Why do people not recognize the need for change? You know, we had catalytic converters or converters, you know, because everyone saw in Los Angeles and elsewhere that, you know, but why? I mean, just I want you to, because I know you've reflected. Why are some people unmindful and unconcerned about the deterioration of our overall environment because of some of our bad habits?
Well, it's actually, honestly, it's a really excellent question, because that's sort of the heart of the issue, isn't it? We've been talking about this since Al Gore threw it at us in no uncertain terms. How do you connect people action to these words? And something that one of my favorite researchers, George Lakoff, who's a cognitive scientist, who's
The elephant,
sort of,
what was it? What does he say? The book
don't
on
think of an elephant. Yeah. And he's sort of made the cognitive science of language accessible to the layperson. I highly recommend his book, Don't Think of an Elephant. So, of course, what are you thinking about now? An elephant. But he talks a lot about how we use language to generate, to mold belief and action. And we're pretty good at acute things like, oh, immigration, build a wall, you know, action oriented. But when it comes to systemic things, we don't have good language to make that jump out at us in simplistic ways, which is something he helps offer how to do.
Okay,
And
I get
so
that, but hold on a second. I get that, and I'm 100% with you. I think that's a great point. But I'm going back to something Donald Trump and the others all have kids. Many of them have grandkids. They're going to inherit the earth. And why are they not? See, I know that we can do better to use words to raise consciousness and raise awareness, but in and of itself, I mean, you got on this. No one had to come to you and give you words. You recognize that it's a problem. Anybody that has listened to the scientists, anyone that looks around and can see the deterioration, you look at the North Pole and you look. Why are people? Why are a significant segment of our community? Why are they not concerned? What, in other words, I'm talking about the psychological, the
yep.
emotional.
Well, that's what I am referring to, the way we use language, our metaphors in our brains. And that's what triggers how we feel about things. So, for instance, like the Republicans have done an excellent job. They know this, they get it. And they've done an excellent job at using frames to say, climate change really, first it was doesn't exist, right? And then it was, it's not that important. And they have done an excellent job at seeding our culture with that notion. That doesn't mean you necessarily believe that, but it's still floating around in our heads of non-urgency. And so our job is through repetition and illustrations and videos. I think one of the most brilliant things I saw about this was what AOC did. I don't know, maybe it was a few years ago, but she kept talking about a politician, AOC, of course, and she was talking about the New Green Deal or the Green New Deal, I always forget. And what we need and what environmentalists sadly are very bad at is we need a vision of what works, not just talk, not just what we don't want. We need a vision right here so that we can say, I like that. Let's go towards that. So she made this video of what it would look like in a world where we are working very hard to reduce the climate crisis. And she showed all the nice things like comfortable public transportation, ease of getting to a park, better jobs. You know, she connected all in a visual. And that was absolutely brilliant.
Okay, let
If
me
we
go back.
can't picture it, we won't go for it.
All right, and so you're a person that's accepting the responsibility, and I admire that. But I'm asking something even more rudimentary. I'm asking cave person type of question. If one of these folks that are say they're not concerned about the environment, if one of their grandkids, if they found out one of their grandkids was in a car in a garage with the door closed and the engine running, they would run in and save the grandchild because they would. So what I'm asking, I'm not asking about how those of you who have done such a great job of trying to raise awareness. I'm asking a question of why doesn't it have why are they not self-starting? What is the rationale? There's some, I mean, is it that they don't, they look at it and say, well, I'm not going to be here, so I don't care. I mean, in other words, why do people throw litter, on the street or throw litter, in the park and not clean it up? Is it an irresponsible thing? Is it somebody else?
It's cause and effect, and it has very much to do with how we talk about it. It's what's normalized.
Mhm.
So if it's normalized to not think about it or take action or do something, then it's very difficult to just you don't guilt people into rarely into action. And this is why I'm saying, this is why I highlighted what AOC did. I've talked about this with my students a lot, students who are blank slates. They have no idea what's happening in the world. And it's really now with all of the pressures we're up against, paying the bills, healthcare, all of these things take priority. And unfortunately, that means the environment, when it's not connected to our well-being, which of course it is, gets shoved down. So what we have to do is like what she did in her video, which says, you know what? We do this, our lives, us regular people, our lives are better than they are right now. And that can win people over who aren't going to go in the burning building of climate crisis and do anything. So you've got to give people a hardcore, tangible, existential reason to take action. And if you're always hoping it's that they're going to take responsibility because we've done this, that's a nice idea, but that's something we pursue and we keep pursuing and you keep putting it out there. But that's not going to be the winning position right now in a world where capitalism dominates everything.
Oh, okay, but here's what I'm asking, because I just keep pushing and why do you have to do something to get them to recognize what they should be recognizing on their own? Why are they not recognizing it on their own? Forget about language and Lakoff and all that other stuff. Why? In other words, every person has, perception, has, the ability to look and see. Why there's got to be some kind of rational, is it because they figure they're not going to be here the next generation, so they don't care?
I think you're looking for a one answer fits all, and I've already basically answered this by
no, I'm not looking for one. I'm looking. Go ahead.
It has everything to do of how we frame the language, because language becomes beliefs, becomes ideas. It's language aren't just words floating in the air. They become ideas in our head. For example, welfare queen. What comes to mind? It's what Reagan planted there, right? Some fat woman with 8 kids leeching off society. He did that on purpose. So yes, it is our job. There's always going to be a few people in the world who really motivate the big changes. We don't wait for 8 billion people, so whatever it is now, to spontaneously care. It has to impact you directly. And for most people, that's just the way it is. And so they could intellectually go, yeah, that's bad. But how many of that intellectual thought turns into action? It's our job to help them find what motivates them.
Okay, so you're living in New York, in Manhattan.
I am near Cornell. I am
Cornell
very
University.
rural.
Okay, so you're in upstate New York. You're in upstate New York.
Correct. Yeah.
In beautiful Cornell. And how's life there?
Well, right now it's beautiful. It's not winter, so
That's so good. Do you get over to Cornell at all?
I am not highly involved with Cornell. I do stuff with other groups independently.
So what's life like there? How do you just to give us a context? How do you spend your time and energy?
Well, I'm still doing the environmental consulting, so I still go back and forth between San Diego and here.
Mm-hmm.
But it's between a lot of desk work and being in the field and managing projects and looking for endangered species is a different type of thing, monitoring them. And I also do some work where I write a lot of expert testimony for attorneys.
Oh, that's good.
For things like in California, it's for under the auspices usually of CEQA or NEPA. Here we have SEEKR. So I do a lot of that, and I like it because a lot of it is really sort of investigative, not journalism, but research, and I like that aspect of it.
So on 2:00, January 20th, 2029, you get a call from the White House, and they say, we've got to figure out our moves to do a better job with the environment. Got to undo a bunch of things. We've got to do some new things, but we need to do things in some sort of way that's going to work. What would you advise?
Honestly, I would say there are a lot of people who have devoted their lives to figuring this out, and I would give them contacts of those people.
Who are those people? Who are those people? Can you say?
Center for the Biological Diversity, people that Earth Justice, the people who've been fighting the good fight for a long time and been collecting the data and doing good things and also yelling into the wind right now. But no, we've got the answers. It's really getting the platform. And I mean, if I were queen, I'd say let's just shift over to democratic progressivism or socialism, and let's just give up capitalism altogether. It'll take a little bit of doing, but
well, okay,
that's where I would start.
But what I'm talking about is what are major things what's the major cause that we're responsible for carbon in the environment? What are the major sources? I know there's a technical name for that, but what are the major sources of carbon in the United States right now that we're responsible for?
Well, the most impactful things we can do, obviously, is better public transportation that's accessible and easy and nice, and put the money in now, because guess what? It might be expensive. It's going to be a hell of a lot more expensive in 10 years. So that. And
how would that be powered? How would that be powered?
Oh, Mike, I am not the expert.
Yes, you are. Yes,
on that. No.
But
well,
are we talking
of course, we need more renewable energy. And look, we know the National Renewable Energy Lab from the Department of Energy has said, if we were to just tap into realistically available rooftop solar. We could power the entire nation and then some. Obviously, that's asking too much, but what it tells us is we have these capabilities, and then we'd have to get into looking at why is that not happening? What are the corporations doing that's not good, that's disallowing the average American to embrace alternative energy? Why can't we have little windmills and solar automatically in around every building and house? I've worked with some groups that have companies that have developed new kinds of, you might call it micro wind and solar, but they're exceedingly efficient. They don't kill any wildlife. And if we could get into those conversations, that'd be great. New York has several initiatives about how to make rooftop solar more accessible. They're not working because of bureaucracy. So there's a lot of that sort of, maybe sounds boring, but important detail. But the other thing I was going to say was we also have to come out of the closet and stop being so scared to not talk about the meat industry and how much that impacts by way of land use and methane. And that is the second most deliverer of fossil, not fossil fuels, of, greenhouse gases. And even David Attenborough and Jane Goodall talk about, like, we could do ourselves a big favor if we would reduce our consumption of meat because of the cost.
You're going to
Simply.
take away my Omaha steak? No, I'm just kidding. I don't have Omaha steak, but okay. But look, okay. So let's think about this. So right now, if we had, during World War II, leading up to World War II, starting in 1940, there was a massive reorganization of our industrial capability and a reorientation massively, millions and millions of people and billions of dollars in order to produce munitions to deal with the problem of World War II. If we were to do the same thing and say, look, if we make the transition to rooftop solar, which, that has we're just using what God gave us, which is the sun. Then we have rooftop solar, and then we have electric cars, and then we don't have oil and gasoline, and we can do that in some way so that we could, the savings and the investment to smooth that out so that people that are heavily invested in fossil fuels and the like, they don't have to take a complete economic hit. We wouldn't want to just completely ruin the economy, but it could be done, and that's what they did in World War II. And that's somewhat they call it the Green New Deal, but really it's not the New Deal so much as it is what President Roosevelt referred to as Dr. Win the War. And now, what do you think of that? I mean, why can't we just do that? Because sun, everybody knows the sun's there. Rooftop solar is easy, and obviously electric cars work. And if you have your own rooftop solar, you can charge it to your house, so you don't have to charge somewhere else. And we could then put a lot of charging stations around. What's wrong with that?
Well, the honest answer,
Yes.
we want to get there.
Yeah.
You get rid of Citizens United. Start there. Because we've got all these answers and solutions. We've got them. We know them. But politics and the power of the fossil fuel lobbyists, among others, the polluters, get in the way. I mean, what did we hear? Was it yesterday that the Supreme Court said, okay, you can't litigate against Bayer over glyphosate? I mean, one step forward, 10 steps back.
Right, but what I'm saying is what I'm proposing is that we do what we need to do to make that broad enough in its appeal that we get some of our brothers and sisters, some of our people in the gas industry and the oil industry on board by basically giving them financial relief for the transition. In other words, what I'm trying to say is, if we take what we actually have and we look at what President Roosevelt did, we use that as a model. It's distasteful because you're basically giving people money that for something that's injurious to the environment. But what about something like that? What about trying to get a consensus on that?
Well, I wouldn't go exactly that route as the answer, but I think one thing that people aren't really aware of is that the economists with the fossil fuel industry, they might not be ethical, but they're not stupid. And a lot of the, for instance, the massive industrial solar and wind developments around San Diego as well as nationwide, a lot of those are owned by fossil fuel companies who know how to play the game. They know how to work the system. They know how to maneuver around NEPA, the national law that's our most prominent environmental law. It's okay, it's not great, but so they're incentivized, obviously, by their bottom line profit margin, which is improving the more we allow for and contract for alternative energy. Problem then, now you get into the weeds, and what we really need are the smaller businesses to be incentivized so they can succeed at what they've got, which are the best designs, more efficient. Fossil fuel wants to do everything quick and dirty. They don't care
That's a
really
great
even about
idea.
efficiency. They want to get the grant and move on. So
No,
that's what
I
they've done.
love that. I love that. I love that. The fact that that's a very good point oh, we got Marie on the line. Marie, what do you think?
Hi. I'm just wondering if your guest might make a comment on what we need to watch for and listen to wording on what the current administration is proposing and a broader impact. For instance, one of the issues is a rollback on the use of lead in hunting and fishing. And I don't know if Renee mentioned what the administration is currently proposing for public comment. That I think probably the public comment just closed recently, but I wonder if she might get into a little bit of that. And again, the wording, when something is proposed, is the wording really what is being proposed or what a bill is about? And that's
I'd love to talk a wee bit about the proposed rule that I wrote the article for County Magazine and that they published. So, yep, unfortunately, the official comment period closed yesterday, but it's gonna come back around when Fish and Wildlife says, what do you think of our decision? So let me tell you what I'm talking about. And the first thing I want to clarify, because I'm pretty sure your audience is pretty savvy about these things. And the thing is, this is a new proposed rule, one of many, that says we will open up the National Wildlife Refuge System, which is under the auspices of the Federal Fish and Wildlife Agency. We're going to open up 95% to much more hunting and fishing. So the thing I wanted to really clarify is that, being a wildlife biologist for forever, this is not, I want to clarify, this is not about some ideological debate between hunters and non-hunters. The issue of whether you agree with hunting or not, killing things for pleasure, is an ongoing and important conversation, but that's not why this really alarmed me. It's the devil's in the details. And what this administration has said with this proposed rule is we're going to remove all unnecessary barriers to hunting. It's not based in science. It's not based in common sense. It's based in appeasing the NRA, the Safari Club, trophy hunters. And so what it does is, after cutting 20% of the staff of Fish and Wildlife, after removing the entire National Wildlife Refuge conservation budget, boop, gone. Who knows what it's being used for? Probably fixing the reflecting pool. And they've also removed a lot of other funds for the National Wildlife Refuge System. So whoever is left for enforcement has to oversee well over 100 million acres. And so the ratcheting up use of these places. And the important thing to know is that this is nationwide now. In San Diego, the refuge system is not on the list yet. But this rule basically puts out this carte blanche. You know how they refer back to other memos and other executive orders. So if you get into the details and read up on those, what this really does is set a precedent for overriding state law as well. Like, well, even if the states say this and that, we can go in because those are unnecessary barriers.
Mhm.
So this is another one of those things that the administration is doing. And if you take the context of what they're doing, it's not really surprising, right? They're the ones who said the endangerment clause. Let's get rid of that. Let's not even talk about the climate crisis. They've got 4 major attacks on the Endangered Species Act that'll pretty much make it virtually useless. Even ongoing protections, right?
So should we be doing this? You know how they had, what did they have, that program that they had off the stage, so they were ready to implement their plans, and Trump's denied that he was associated with it, but it's not true, he was. Should we be getting ready? I think it all comes down to January 20th, 2029, or even perhaps before that, when if the Congress shifts back to a Democratic Congress. But certainly, if we get a Democratic Congress and a Democratic president, should we be doing the homework now, like the MAGA people did, so that we have looking at all these areas and pulling together everything, and so that we know right away, as soon as there's a shift, that we can go in and do whatever we can do with the executive authority and hopefully through Congress?
And that's an excellent point, because some people are doing that, but typically, I want to say Democrats, let's say liberals, are really bad at being proactive. We're always being defensive and putting our finger in the dike and saying, like, not getting ahead of the game. We didn't have a Project 2025.
That's what I was trying to think of.
Yeah, but this rule and the others are actually virtually scripted. They told us they were going to do this in Project 2025, and here they are. So it really, and I think to some of the research and lawyers with some of the nonprofits, they've been doing the homework and they're not surprised. But the general public is kind of like, oh my goodness, what? Yeah, we knew this was coming down the pike. And so I think, it's easy to get pretty frustrated. I mean, I've been a volunteer activist since I was 12, and I've been seriously, depressed and frustrated, like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming, this is too much. But
That's why what I'm trying to get to is I'm trying to look into the future and put, it's like a bad memory. The faster you can put this bad memory behind you, the better. And I really am trying to figure out, for example, what lessons should our president be looking, who should he or she be looking at for good examples of how a president handles, whether it be Abraham Lincoln, President Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy. Did you happen to see the New Republic's listing of the 10 best and 10 worst presidents? They just put it out. Did you see that?
no.
Oh yeah, no, it was really good. If you go to New Republic, and you can get it online. I mean, they're not charging for it, but it's so funny. Now, I want to ask you, this is a real challenge. I want you to close your eyes and really think deeply. Who do you think made worst president? Just really try hard, okay? Just really rack your
Who
brain.
made the president? Well,
Who
I
made
would
the
hope
worst, who is the number one, hands down, double digit lead number, unanimous choice as the worst president in American history? What do you think? Who do you think that was?
Well, I'm thinking it's not going to be the obvious answer, which to me is, of course, our current
No, it
president.
is. It is the
Is
current
it?
president.
Okay.
The
That makes sense.
the
I mean,
new
we have a
Republic,
psychopath toddler
they,
making decisions for the world. It's scary. But
they,
I was going to say one thing
go
that
ahead.
helps me when I'm feeling overwhelmed and what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? You know, and for the average person who doesn't have all the time in the world to become an activist, we come back, bring it back in. Don't think globally, just act locally. Even Jane Goodall said, forget that old um, adage. Work where you are. Do something different locally. And the good news is, California, albeit far from perfect, has really been a leader in a lot of things. Like regarding this proposed rule, they have um, signed October last year. They have the AB 1319. It's called the California Shield. And they actually passed legislature that said for Fish and Wildlife State to monitor federal actions that may decrease federal protections for endangered or threatened species if that they decide would significantly impact California species. They will provisionally immediately list those species under the California Endangered Species Act based on a couple of requirements, like are they already a candidate for listing as of a certain date. So I know, here's the thing, it always sounds boring, but it's not. Pay attention to what your state agencies are doing, whether it's energy, whether it's wildlife, because oftentimes there'll be like 5 commissioners sitting there making big decisions. We're not even talking about politicians. We know what we're up against lobbying them. But I have gone and lobbied state and federal on behalf for free, on behalf of nonprofits. And if you think these people aren't being lobbied just because there's certain rules about conflict of interest, think again. I don't mean anything illegal, I mean legally. So you can go and you can listen in on decisions being made. You can write up a comment for a meeting about, I want to see this. I don't want that. I don't like that decision. I like this one. And that's, you send that note into the commissioners. Pay attention to that, because that's where our power really is going to be. And then when we get someone who's not afraid to speak up, whether you like Newsom or not, it's fair to say he's not afraid to push back on this administration. And so that means California really can lead the way in a lot of its power of setting precedents.
You know,
And that's up to the people to pay attention to that.
absolutely.
Really.
So I'm thinking, okay, so why don't we pull together our best foundations and some of our best scholars and have a conference and call it 2029 and put together a game plan in all of the important areas. And we'll just limit it to environment in our discussion today, but put together, what, not just how to undo what was done, but to come up with something that people, can live with. I like FDR. He said that he was slightly left of center. And I think that if you have a program that is connected to and respect for people of faith, because I think if you're a person of faith, the number one thing that you have to recognize, if that's where you're coming from, is God put all this wonderful natural habitat and air and water, the rest of it on the earth, and we need to protect it. Now, you can be an atheist and still have the same point of view, but what I'm thinking is, it's really important for us to start thinking about what we're going to do and not ignore, but pretty much, you know, put our energy into how we're going to create this new world. And it is exciting to see. You're right there in New York now. Are you impacted by what's going on in the city of New York or some of these recent elections in the Democratic Party where we had more progressive people replacing more less progressive people in the most recent election in New York?
I would say we're probably impacted, I mean, in some ways that I'm not aware of yet, since it's been pretty recent, but I know the election of Mamdani has just generated tremendous hope among people that say we can't fight this system, we can't. So I think he's done for the whole nation, not just New Yorkers by any stretch,
Oh yeah,
given us hope that we can fight money in politics with what we really helps the people. You know, like I said, we've got to get back to local, looking at local actions as powerful and creating waves. It's not just a nice poetic cliche. It's where our power is now, because clearly we can't win with a whole lot of progressive actions with this so-called Supreme Court. We're certainly not going to get anywhere. Like when people say, well, why comment? When I ask them to comment on this proposed rule and how devastating it will be, this hunting. I mean, it's opening up more trapping, which is heinous. I've studied trapping quite a bit, and there's nothing good to say about it. But luckily, San Diego or California does not allow sport trapping. Again, showing some leadership in this area. So, but when people say, oh, why bother commenting? The administration, the current Fish and Wildlife is not going to listen to me. I'm not going to disagree to that per se, but those people aren't going to be there forever. This administration, though they might think they are, they're not going to be there forever. And these comments, as you probably know, are used in the courts to say, here's what the people said.
But
so it still matters. It still matters to have your voice put on the record. And then when we see where our voices are taken off the record, that's something big we have to fight. So we have to keep taking a step back. But I love your idea of let's have not one conference, let's have several conferences to get together. You know, this is what the Republicans now, the MAGAs, they do it several times a year. They go to some fancy resort, they have fun, and they get together and say, this is how we've got to do this. And they present the memos to all the Fox Newsies and say, this is how you talk about it. This is our goal. This is what you say. And they do that several times a year, while again, the liberals are scrambling, sticking their finger in a dike saying, no, wait, no, that's not what we want. Well, what do we want? Let's verbalize what we want very specifically. And that's why Mamdani's brilliant, because he does that. He'll barely talk to the what we don't want. Yeah, that's no good. And then he'll get on, and it's not just rhetoric.
No,
he really says, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. And that is so refreshing.
He endorsed 3 Democratic congressional candidates in the election that took place this last week. And all 3 of them won. They all replaced incumbents. I think there was one open seat. So that was really exciting in New York. But here's one of the things. I'm a trial lawyer, and one of the things that I was listening to someone who's a trial lawyer give a talk the other day, and trial lawyers try to teach themselves and learn how to be persuasive with juries to, in my case, hopefully redress wrongs, correct people that have been victimized by fraud or something like that. And one of the things that you learn is not to pay attention to the other side. It doesn't mean you ignore their arguments. If they make any arguments that you think might be effective, you fold your reaction to that within the presentation of your case so that you're making your key points. But what I'm training myself to do is not say the what I call the T word. It's worse than the T word is the worst word that you can use right now, because that person is the very worst. And I don't want to let the worst, I don't want to spend any time thinking about the past. And that's what that is. That is rapidly becoming the past. And so in order for us to be successful, to move into the future, we have, like they say, you have to be what you want the future to be. You have to do that now. And you're doing a great job of doing that. Although I really think that, I know you moved back to Cornell for some very important family reasons, but I really have to say I commend you because you are literally having a cross continental career, and that's great. And you're proving that even though you're in and around the Cornell community, that doesn't keep you from having a very hands-on understanding of what's going on in California. But now let's talk about we're gonna talk about a bunch of other things. I want to talk. Let's get the Lyme discussion off the table because that's really scary to me. 300,000 or 400,000
Should
people a
be.
year. You had to live through that. Lyme disease, how do people get it? How do they avoid it? What do they do if they have it? And I know you've had to go through these experiences. What should we all know about Lyme disease?
Well, I can start by saying, why am I talking about this aside from being a wildlife biologist? I'm not here to give the basic, public service announcement of how to try and avoid ticks. That's everywhere. You can find that. It's marginally successful. But I'm here because as a wildlife biologist, I was immersed in ticks because of my work. In my 20s, I was on Camp Pendleton 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, bushwhacking. And the CDC said, don't worry, there's no Lyme here. So I didn't. And long story short, 15 years later, I was finally diagnosed with several tick-borne pathogens that had already done their damage. And I have some major disabilities still ongoing that you have to work on because of what these pathogens can do. So the problem is it's the fastest growing infectious disease in the nation, but we're relying on the CDC's numbers to decide whether or not this is urgent or not. And that's a problem, not an opinion, but it's basically the CDC case definition for Lyme is intended to be used to determine surveillance purposes. It is not made to represent the full incidence of cases in any area. I could go into great detail about how that comes about, but this subtlety impacts doctors who then say, oh, well, it's low case numbers are not here. Oh, well, and then doctors also don't, because of many political reasons that I can go into a little bit, don't even acknowledge the most serious part of Lyme. And when I say Lyme, I mean all the co-infections that go with it that aren't even counted, that can be worse than the Lyme bacteria, which we call Borrelia. So these doctors say chronic Lyme because the CDC says, because the Infectious Disease Society of America and the NIH have said, after the insurance companies saying, don't say that, chronic Lyme doesn't exist, even though we're well aware for decades it's been discussed as a thing where when you're bitten, you can treat it. And oftentimes people treat it successfully with something simple, with an antibiotic, doxycycline. That's what happened to me. I finally just figured out I had these infections. I treated with doxycycline. I felt better. And then I slowly felt worse, but it creeps up on you sometimes. Sometimes it's a sledgehammer. And at that point, you're not treated for this thing. It usually takes people 5 to 7 years to get treatment for chronic Lyme. And we're finally seeing a similar scenario being taken seriously. That's long COVID. And we're seeing that bacteria and viruses can come back and haunt us in ways that we were not taught. None of these things were taught when I was a student.
So how are you
Ago.
doing now? How are you doing now? Are you good? Are you suffering?
I still struggle a lot. I'm actively fighting new infections. So I have chronic fatigue. I have dysautonomia. I've got a long list of things that I have to deal with, but basically chronic migraine from this parasite that the tick is quite abundant in California, is where I got 2 species of this thing called Babesia that vets, I've joked with my vets saying, can you be my doctor? Because you know more about this than the average human physician. And Babesia acts like malaria. It's not a bacteria. It's a protozoan that goes after your red blood cells and goes to the brain, etc., and really wreaks havoc. And that's not even tested when you say, I think I might have Lyme. And how do you think you might have Lyme? Some people never see the tick bite, and they say, oh, well, you get this bullseye rash. If you get this big bullseye rash, it's 100% definitive that you have the Lyme bacteria, but that happens maybe 25% of the time in infections. So we can't rely on that. But the CDC wants to rely on that. The CDC will test you, and it needs to be positive for their surveillance data.
What does surveillance data mean?
Basically, that's the data we see when the CDC says this is how many people have had Lyme in California. It's not accurate whatsoever because that's not what they're measuring. When they say, if they're going to write down an incidence of Lyme in California, first they want you to give blood. There's a chipmunk that escaped in my office because my cat brought it in, my indoor cat, and now it's screaming at me. And
well, you better.
It runs across my desk. It's
okay.
not
Okay, now listen, we have 6 minutes left. I want you
okay, so anyway, suffice to say, you can find a whole lot of information on why the CDC test, the test you get if you say, hey, doc, test me for Lyme. The test they do is extremely flawed and can have up to a 70% false negative. If you think you have Lyme, be tested, and I can't say this enough, by one of the tick-borne specialty labs. The one everybody knows about is called IGeneX. You go on their website, they tell you, here's how you get your blood drawn, here's how you talk to your doctor, here's what you do. They make it as accessible. IGeneX, IGENEX.
All right, now listen, we've got 5 minutes. What did you want to say today that we haven't discussed in 5 minutes?
Oh my gosh. Let's see. I think I always start and finish with, I got into, wildlife biologist. I always loved, I said, I'm going to be studying animals. I'm going to be following elephants around. I never thought it would be anacondas.
Well, you went to the Amazon too, though. You went to the Amazon, didn't you?
I lived in Venezuela and Ecuador, and I did the first ever study of anacondas in the wild. And
what's an anaconda? What's an anaconda? What's an anaconda?
Anaconda, the giant, the green anaconda, the biggest snake in the world.
And you saw one?
I caught about 800.
Oh my God. Jesus.
And released them.
Okay, go ahead.
So
that's what I want to hear about. I'm sorry to be the little boy in the room, but
right.
I'm dying
it
to
was
find
wonderful.
Out about that.
It set the bar really high. I mean, I taught in the Galapagos and Ecuador and Venezuela, and it set the bar high. So I think on that note, what I want to say is, and don't take this as this isn't just cliche or poetic. If you want to help the environment, step one, get out into it and reinstill your love of what you're doing this for. Because you can, when it's 3 a.m. and you're writing comments or you're angry at the world because they don't care about Mother Nature, you need to reconnect. My sanity, my church is going for hikes. I can go right out my back door. I take my dogs. If I didn't have that, I probably would have jumped off the roof by now.
That's great.
So
did you go down the Amazon? Did you actually go down the Amazon?
No, we were along the tributaries of the Orinoco.
Okay, all right. So you were deep in.
We're in vast flooded wetlands called the Llanos, which is like if you've heard of the Pantanal further south, it's similar.
How did you get there? How did you get there?
So you take a plane to Caracas, you take a plane to San Fernando, you take a bus. I also worked in Ecuador. Well, I did some teaching in Tiputini in Ecuador, and that was the fun one where you take a plane, and then you take a smaller plane, and then you take a modest-sized boat down the Napo River, and then you take a truck that is driven by the locals working for Exxon because it's their private property. And then you take a small boat without even a roof. So if it rains, you're screwed.
I would love to
So-
have you as an expert witness. I'd put you on the stand and have you tell the jury what you just said, ingratiate yourself like crazy, and then whatever you said after that would be gospel. So that's a fantastic. I can see.
Well,
what
I'll
I'm gonna
come
use this
back
today.
on.
Yeah, do
Thank-
please.
I'll come back on because I am writing an adventure memoir because there's so many good stories.
I don't mean to be.
Crazy filmmakers.
Yeah, I don't mean to be
Crazy. I
apolitical.
was shot at 3 times. I was
Yeah.
approached with a machete twice. I'm still here.
I read that book
Lots
about.
of
I read
good
that book about
stories.
Theodore Roosevelt when he went down, almost was killed, and almost died. I would love to have you come back. I mean, and just forget, not talk about politics, but just talk about your adventures. How exciting!
Oh,
mean,
you won't shut me up. You get
All right,
me
well,
on
good.
because
Well, then,
it's
okay.
so fun. It's
All right,
so
well,
fun.
we'll do that in the next month, and we're getting somewhat close to being out of time. But give us a few last thoughts, please.
I think the last thought is every morning I get up and I turn on Democracy Now! And I say, okay, how am I going to be depressed today by the news? And
Well,
I
see-
think we have to do what I've already said, which is know what's going on, but really don't retreat. You can't retreat now. And that doesn't mean you have to become some part-time, full-time activist. The little bits matter. The little things matter because there are a lot of us, and it takes what, 3% of the people to fight back to win. Those statistics are out there. And it's not as, it seems insurmountable, but if we
Oh.
actually can get together on some things, some very basic
No.
things, we have power. We won't have the power of the money, but we have
The
the
thing
power
you
of
have
the
to
people.
realize, is you inspire others. You just by your personal example and what you've gone through and what your expertise is, that inspires others. That is the most important resource that we have right now, is people that have a memory and a commitment, so that in January of 2029, a new day in America. I want to thank you so much for coming on, and now you've promised to come back, so we're going to hold you
I
to that.
will.
All right.
And when you have that conference in 2029, I will go.
We're gonna get you over there. Okay, good. Hey, thanks to everybody, and happy July 4th. We will not be here on July 4th, but we are thinking positive thoughts. We're doing what we can, where we are, with what we have, and we're going to be a part of a major effort to put this country back on track, get us moving ahead. Thanks so much, KNSJ Talk to the Town.
Thank
Say
you.
goodbye. Thanks so much to our wonderful guest.
Thanks. It was really fun.
Thank you for joining us on Talk of the Town with former San Diego City Attorney Mike Aguirre here on KNSJ Descanso, 89.1 FM, serving San Diego.
Hey, Marie. You're on mute. I didn't know.
Okay, yeah, I
There you
just want to
go.
make sure we were off the air.
How'd it go? You think? Okay.
Uh, yeah. I
We can talk
keep
later.
forgetting. Yeah, Alex, are you there?
Yeah, where'd you go?
Alex,
Oh, yep, I'm here.
do you need to leave, or can Renee and I talk for a little bit?
Oh, yeah, I'm just finalizing things. Let me leave the Zoom.
Okay. Oh, and you'll send me the recording.
Yeah, I'll do that
Thank
right
you.
now.
We transfer.
That's okay.
Yeah, I like that.
We're not
Well-
recording now, are we?
No.
Here, yeah, let me get out of
Oh
here.
no. Actually, record is still on.
On
You
the
want to
live
take
stream,